And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we The good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have a returning good brother into the temple. Coming to us for the first time in about 3 years, creator of Thrones and Bones, as well as the numerous books associated with it, and now coming back with a brand new adventure within that universe, known as Fury the Forsaken, the one and only Lou Anders. How you doing today, man?
Hey, it's great to be here. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming on, and thank you for braving time zone hell. Huh. Even though the time zone gap isn't that much, it's just principle.
My pleasure.
Hmm. But I know it's been a few years. What have you been up to regarding Thrones and Bones and regarding the setting that you've developed over the years?
Well, I don't remember which project we were talking about the last time I was on, but quite a bit has happened with it. Originally back in 2021 was when I put out the setting guide and
Mm-hmm.
which is called Norgard, and the Sagas of Norgard, adventure collection.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe we talked when the book length adventure Vengeance of Valravn came out.
That's
And then after
correct.
that, right? Okay, so that was followed up by Tales from Stokey's Hall, which was because this whole thing was born from a series of children's books. But Tales from Stokey's Hall
Mm-hmm.
is a collection of short stories by other writers, not me, writing adult short stories set in the world of Norgard.
Mm-hmm.
And so that came up about 2, 3 years ago. And then we had the whole OGL fiasco, and
Mm-hmm.
I switched from 5e to Tales of the Valiant, although it's 100% 5e compatible, and so you can still run anything I do with Dungeons and Dragons.
Mm-hmm.
But so when Cobalt Press launched the Tales of the Valiant role playing game, they invited a number of people to contribute original adventures to I think they call it the Adventure Pack 1. And I wrote a first level adventure using the Tales of Valiant system called Banner of the Bull, which was set in Norgard.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they did their Game Master's Guide, they did it again. And so for Adventure Pack 2, I wrote, I had frequent Cobalt Brian Susskind write Keeper of the Drowned, which was included in the Adventure Pack for the second Cobalt Press Kickstarter. And then this hasn't come out yet, but they've done their Labyrinth World Book and Labyrinth Adventure. The Labyrinth being their big adventure overlay / campaign setting. The roads between the worlds that connect any world you want to with their world, with other worlds, with the planes. And they did there's something called the Labyrinth Adventure Book, which is a hardcover collection of adventures with a loose framing plot. And I contributed to that, and it took us a little while to work out the IPs, but you in that adventure you go to Norengard in something they publish. That's called In the Court of the Clockwork Queen, and it starts out anywhere, any place, and it goes to a city called Arvik in my setting in Norengard, and then it goes from Norengard to back into the Labyrinth. And I'm excited for people to see that. But that was really interesting because we crossed the streams.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been a while since I've done a Kickstarter of my own. And we put out a short third level adventure called Troll of the Town, which Kelly Pollock wrote. And so those adventures, Banner of the Bull, Keeper of the Drowned, and Troll of the Town, form a first, second, third level adventure path. I mean, you actually hit second level in the first adventure, and then it's third level for the next two. And so I wanted to follow that up with another similarly sized adventure for fourth level,
Mm-hmm.
and those were all softcover releases. And I asked Richard Pett if he wanted to write something, and Richard, I've loved his work since Cat and Mouse, which was the first thing I ever played in Cobalt Press's Midgard setting set in their Southlands. But Richard wrote the Weeby Goblin series for Pathfinder. Many wonderful and celebrated. He has an adventure that was reprinted in Ghost of Saltmarsh.
Oh yeah.
And so I invited him to write like a 5,000-word story that would be the fourth in that series.
Yeah. You're coming in a bit distorted.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was that better?
I can barely hear you.
So we start this over.
Yeah, did you step away from the mic or something?
No, I didn't. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, you sound very distant.
Okay, I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna switch my. We may need to start over.
All right.
I'm gonna switch to a different internet, and it may disconnect us. Let me see.
All right. So give it a moment, folks.
Can you still hear me?
I can, but I just barely. And I've got you at 100%.
Interesting. I don't know what's going on. Because I'm at 100% here too.
Oh. Yeah, you come in a little bit, but it's not much.
Okay. I can unplug my mic and we can just go through the computer mic and see if that works.
Yeah, we can try that.
Alright. I don't know if you can hear me now.
Let me bump it up to 200%. Try something.
Okay.
Try to say something.
See if you can hear me now. Play some video. Alright. Let's go to device.
Okay, how are we doing now? Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Huh. Okay, for some reason Discord wasn't liking my expensive Elgato microphone.
That's weird.
Ugh.
Yeah, but
That is weird.
yeah. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. We'll just chalk it up to technology having some teething troubles, but I do remember that you were one of the first third-party folks that I saw who jumped onto Tales of the Valiant and was making modules. So there were a few people who had said, "Oh, this is compatible with both 5e and Tales of the Valiant," but they said so before Tales of the Valiant was even out.
Yeah.
Including some of my dear friends on this channel. But what's been your impression so far, shifting over from 5e to Tales of the Valiant as the primary system?
I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. I wish that I wish the OGL controversy had never happened. I wish that everyone was one big happy family, and I wish that the 2024 edition of Dungeons & Dragons looked more like Tales of the Valiant. But for me, several of the things they do work just really, really well. I love the split from race into heritage and lineage. Before I was ever even writing role-playing games, in my novels, I didn't have, the racial languages. Giants don't speak giant. Dwarves don't speak dwarvish. The monsters and non-human peoples speak the language of whatever country they're in. And in my setting, there was a big diaspora of dwarves in prehistory, and a lot of them settled in a nearby Celtic country. The ones that stayed just lived with the people. And then some settled in the mountains. And so, the dwarves that settled in the mountains would have, I think, Tales of the Valiant calls it like a stone folk or fire forged heritage. They would be your traditional dwarves, but the other two groups of dwarves would just take a heritage from the country, and from anyone who lived in those countries. The ones in Norengard would have the Noranian heritage, just like a person from Norengard. And so that worked beautifully with the way I was already thinking about my setting. And then I love the monster creation rules. I know you mentioned some people were putting out Tales of the Valiant compatible material before Tales of the Valiant was even out, and I get a little. It's a pet peeve of mine when I picked up a few things and I would look and all they had done with the monsters was change the formatting. And there's some very, very specific guidelines for how you build monsters in the Game Master's Guide that I was privy to about a year and a half before it came out. But there's a very specific way to make monsters for Tales of the Valiant, and it's really, really accurate in terms of CR.
Yeah.
And so when I look at something from a third party and I can just clearly tell that they're not using the Tales of the Valiant rules to make Tales of the Valiant monsters, I gotta admit I my respect for them drops several notches.
You know how far some people jump the gun. I saw several Kickstarters that were that still advertised it as BFR compatible.
Yeah. Well. The thing is that you're not supposed to. So you have to have a compatibility license with Cobalt Press to use the compatible with Tales of the Valiant, to mention Tales of the Valiant. Otherwise, you are supposed to say Black Flag compatible.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to actually have Tales of the Valiant in the title. I know at least one product that is using Tales of the Valiant on their cover, and when you look inside, it's very clear they don't have a clue what Tales of the Valiant is, so they've clearly not signed the license. But
I think a lot of people
I don't
assumed that it would just be exactly like 5e, just under Cobalt Press instead of Wizards of the Coast.
Exactly, and it's not, and it's completely compatible, but it's not. You know, the monsters don't have hit dice at all. You start with a fixed number of hit points based on the CR of the monster, and then that is adjusted up and down by a percentage point based on the traits that the monster has. And other things like is the armor class outside of a range, is its attack damage below or above the range, and those modify the monster. So, you know, having made a ton of monsters using the rules in the 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide, and there being no rules in the 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide, I really, really, really like the rules in the Game Master's Guide for building TOV monsters, and I built a lot now, and I'm absolutely in love with it. So, both in terms of the players facing mechanics and lore, and the behind the scenes, you know, GM mechanics, I really like the system a lot.
Yeah,
but
I remember a couple of years ago I did a lengthy breakdown on some of the changes between like the 2014 version of the classes versus the Tales of the Valiant version, and there was a lot there that I liked. Some classes didn't get overhauled as much, like say Monk, but they didn't really need to. Whereas other ones like I'd say Wizard got one of the bigger overhauls, but that's because Wizard was one of the biggest victims of the dead level problem.
I'm a big fan of the fact that the bards now actually play music.
Yeah.
You know, they've got the bardic performance, which is a song that they kick in and they keep it going with a bonus action, I think. And so your bard isn't, you know, because previously I was always wondering, like, what is a bard actually doing in that 6-second turn? You know, that's like maybe one, is it just, you know, hitting a power chord and that's all the bard is doing? And so now the bards actually play a song, which is, you know, they're playing throughout the course of the fight. And I love that. I love that story-wise, and I love that mechanic-wise.
Oh, yeah. And I'd also be remiss if I didn't bring up the whole luck thing that I specifically pointed out when I did that video. Shifting luck away from being a feat into being a core mechanic.
Which the players track. How nice is that?
Yeah.
How nice is that? Yeah.
The players
I don't
track,
have to worry about it.
It's one that boarding is not a good idea.
Yeah. We played a couple games where they would completely forget they had it, and I would be like, if you remembered it, but now they're like, you know, telling each other, use your luck. Have you got enough luck? You can spend your luck points, and we love it. We love it.
But Now, with that in mind, Fear of the Forsaken is a fourth level adventure.
Yep.
Now, is it going to be one of those that is largely going to be fourth level from beginning to end, or do you see characters going up a few levels by the end of the campaign?
So I added up all the possible experience points you could get if you took every option and you hit fifth level at the end of the adventure. There's a lot of exploration and social stuff going on, and there's also some mass combat mechanics we've created for it. So while you're in a pretty big battle at the end, you're not necessarily the one delivering killing blows. And it worked out to just one level. I was surprised. I thought when we were working on it that you would end the adventure at sixth level, but I'm happy with that the way it is, and it's right now it's 111 pages, and I haven't put all of the art into the appendix yet. Everything else is laid out, but the appendix is still a little rough, and so it's going to be, I don't know, 120 pages, 125 pages when it's done, maybe. And it's quite a sizable saga. We're running it now. I'm running it for my own group on YouTube as sort of a live stream, actual play / playtest. And we've had 6 sessions, and I think we're going to have 2 more, probably a double length final session. So they're about 2 hours each a session. So 12 it'll end up being about 14 to 16 hours of gameplay, and they've skipped over some options too. So it's a meaty story.
Yeah,
it's an epic saga, dare I say.
If it weren't for the fact that this is already that Thrones and Bones already goes very Norse as is, I would have raised an eyebrow at that. But
yeah.
Because of the fact that saga is used quite a bit in mythology for this region of the world, I technically have to give that a pass, but in a technically correct kind of way, the best kind of correct.
Well, what's funny is that you're not, if you sign the compatibility license, you can't use the word valiant in a title, and it's so funny to me because Drengar is the Norse term for a valiant person. And so I'm very tempted to just call something Tales of the Drengar.
Well, that would be technically correct.
Yep.
Lord knows there are plenty of stories of people getting away under those margins, but by understanding how to really be the worst kind of rules lawyer.
Yep.
Lord.
So, the backstory. I think I when my voice was cutting out, I was saying I had contributed 2 adventures to the 2 adventure packs for Cobalt Press's Kickstarters, and then we had done a 3rd Kickstarter just for the reason you mentioned that Brian Suskin's adventure was not on its own enough to get people up a level. So I asked Kelly Pollock to write a short 3rd level adventure so that Kelly and Brian's adventure together would get people to 4th level. And I had asked Richard Pett, whose work I love, to write another short adventure for 4th level. And it was supposed to be about 5,000 words, and Richard wrote 25,000 words. So
it's 5,000 words, kind of like how it's just a milk run.
Yep. So we but that was I hired Richard in October of 2023, and we have been passing the story back and forth and working it and reworking it and cutting it down and adding more to it that whole time. So at a certain point I realized it was going to be its own standalone thing, and excuse me. And it really but it was a lot of work, but I think it's one of the best things that I will have done. And some of the previous adventures, I mean, one of the things I think sometimes when people think about Norse mythology, they have this really grim and gritty and grimdarky kind of perception with everybody doing the blood eagle on dead bodies and things like that, and that's to ignore the incredible amount of humor in the Norse sagas, and some downright goofy stuff.
I mean, Thor wore
And
a dress, for God's sake.
oh yeah, the cross dressing and the sex changing, and it's really, and just the humor, and so a couple of the previous adventures are pretty light. Certainly Banner the Bull has some funny moments, and nope, this one's dark and grim. This one is pretty dark, pretty grim,
I mean,
and
part of the thing is dealing with a onslaught of Draugrs. So
yep,
it's kind of hard to. I was gonna say it's kind of hard to do something like Draugr in a lighthearted tone, but then I
right,
remembered, films like Shaun of the Dead exist. So
yep.
maybe
No,
maybe
and
it's
it
possible this just isn't going to do that.
one of the things I love about Draugr is they're not zombies. They're intelligent.
Yeah.
They're people who refuse to die and stay dead for usually for reasons of greed or resentment or something that they feel they have to accomplish that they didn't accomplish.
Which
And so in the previously aforementioned adventure, Vengeance of the Valravan, that takes place in a city called Sindholm, and in Sindholm they've buried a longship of a famous captain in the middle of the city, and so there's a mound, in the middle of the city with a ship inside, and there's a Draugr in the mound who sailed all over the world, and at night he sings sea shanties he's picked up from other ports, and you can imagine coming out of a mead hall and hearing a voice under the earth singing, and some drunk sitting on the hill and singing with him all night. And if you went into his burrow, he'd probably kill you. But if you want to sit on it and sing with him till the sun comes up, sure, why not? So, I think that's a Draugr who I think is funny.
yeah.
The setup for Fury, players stick your fingers in your ears, is you've been tasked by the Jarl of the city of Bensa, where the prior 3 adventures take place, to deliver some cattle to a tiny village called Smarvik, because they're predicting a really, really cold winter. And in Norengard, as in real world Norway, you can go from t-shirt weather to 30 feet of snow in 2 weeks. So there's no spring. It's just summer, winter. So you're taking the cattle to Smarvik when you're assaulted by a monster in the woods, and then you get to Smarvik and find it abandoned, and everyone has fled from said monster to the lake town of Freckerheim, which is built on the start of the not the seaside, but I think it's called the terminus of a fjord. And you get there and you're snowed in, and the Draugr come and say they're going to come back in 3 days and raze the town to the ground or to the water, and so you can't leave. The population the town's been for reasons I won't spoil, the town has lost a lot of its young people, so it's old people and children, and you've got 3 days to teach them how to fight and withstand the Draugr invasion, which is it's 7 samurai in a Viking lake town, and then if you choose, you can engage the mystery of why this is all happening, or you can just ignore it. But there is a mystery and a lot of social role play opportunities to uncover what's the backstory for this town.
Yeah. And since Draugr are a big deal, I think a lot of people, especially if they played through like the more recent God of War games, they may have seen Draugr as an aggressive form in that. But how do you convey to people that Draugr aren't necessarily zombies in the traditional sense, since they have been depicted as such in some media?
Yep. Part of it's just like, I don't want to spoil too much, but the Draugr in this rises out of the water and gives a speech with some literary references in it. So right off, he's not just a mindless eating machine or something. And also, this is not I don't. it may be the first time some people encounter it, but we've done a lot with Draugr in other works too.
Yeah, I can get that. Though it's a case where every book is potentially someone's first, so it's
Exactly. But I think the way this Draugr is introduced makes it pretty clear that this is that it's somebody with a score to settle.
Mhm. And I think the idea of depicting them as people with scores to settle has a bit more of a cultural footprint, so that people
Mhm.
even if they're not as familiar with Norse mythology as you and I, can put two and two together there.
Yep.
Since uh, there's been plenty of stories of people who have some sort of past attachment or past grudge that it results them from being able to actually pass on or die or whatnot. And
Absolutely. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
now you mentioned mass combat, and I realize that's something that isn't in the core rules of Tales of the Valiant. Um, how exactly do you have mass combat work? Since that's one of those things that a lot of people have attempted with very mixed results all over the place.
Yep. I've been working on this for a long time. No guarantee you won't think this is mixed results. It's a tough nut to crack, but I've had several of my playtesters say that they like it. They think it's pretty elegant. My first going into it, I did not want to have a mini game on top of the game. I didn't want people to have to learn a new system in order to do this. I want people to be able to do this the way they've always played Dungeons and Dragons. So units behave like swarms.
Mm-hmm.
So you can run them as a stat block, and the benefit of that is that units can attack players, players can attack units, units can attack structures. The ship can bomb the unit can attack the ship, the player can attack the unit can attack the player.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some scaling rules for scaling it up and down if a single individual is attacking the unit or back. There's a morale system, so a unit can break and run. There are ways to rally and recruit units. I originally was working on a completely separate book called Battlecraft, for which I've already got some really fabulous art that no one's seen. And I was going to offer that as a stretch goal, and I realized that it would really benefit from having its own dedicated adventures as part of that book.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took that out of the stretch goals before we launched the Kickstarter. And so what's in the back of Fury the Forsaken are just the very, very basic rules explained just enough to run Fury. And the more expansive rules will wait for a future publication. But there's enough in Fury to run the final battle and have a good time with it.
Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing that because of the whole 3 days setup, there's a lot of variation in terms of how that final battle can be set up.
Yes, and it being a lake town and Draugr being able to swim, it's there's a lot of places where attacks can come from, and so the players have basically we divide the 3 days into morning and afternoon, and the players have those time blocks in which they can do things. They can recruit, they can train, they can set traps, they can try and convince certain key NPCs to help, and so they have basically 6 blocks to spend as they want to search for more weapons, etc. And there's some other things in the adventure that if things go a certain way, you'll have access to certain resources. If they go another way, you'll lose those resources. So it's very open-ended as to how the battle looks when it starts.
Yeah.
And there's certain people that can be recruited or not recruited. There's certain weapons you can find or not find, and so it probably has a lot of replayability for that reason. In fact, the town is really, 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 I think, richly detailed. Richard's built some wonderful characters in the priest, the Gothi of the temple, and the guy who runs the mead hall, and the Jarl, and the town watch captain. And so this town could be like a little mini setting guide for either a starting point or a home base for the characters.
Mhm.
And so in that regard, I think it's got portability too.
Yeah. And so, given all the moving parts when it comes to the resources of the town and the people involved in their relationships, do you have plans on putting a campaign sheet in like the back end of the book?
No, I'm in the appendix. I go through the recommended way the battle should play out, and detail some of the resources there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a sheet, but it is kind of a, there are itemized lists of this is how we suggest running this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. When you're dealing with resources and what's prepped and what isn't within a given town for this sort of siege, having a means to keep that keep everyone on the same page with that is going to be paramount.
It's actually going really smoothly. Like I said, I've had several people play test it, and then I'm running my own play test. And my own play test, we just spent a whole session on prepping the town for the attack, and I was really relieved at how easy it was to do, and how easily my players picked up on what was happening.
Yeah, I can get that. Now, with that in mind,
and let me add too, if I can. Heroic Maps went over and above. Joe built the Heroic Maps, and I have been working together for 5 years now, and he made maps for every location, and then he pulled out a few extra locations he thought he just better make a map for, and that aren't specifically detailed in the attack, but attack could spill over. And for the maps, he did daytime, nighttime, day showing the interior of the building, day just showing the exterior of the building, night showing the interior of the building, night showing the exterior of the building, and then a separate battle map where he took the kind of purple sky from one of the illustrations, the one that's on the Kickstarter page, and applied that as a purple filter on the nighttime battle map, so that you have a separate, like, this is the night of the battle versus this is the regular night. And then for some of them, he did on fire and not on fire versions. And then, of course, gridded and ungridded. So all told, I think there were 100 and... actually, all told, with every variation, including gridded and ungridded, there were like 256 separate maps. Which is phenomenal. And that's being offered as an add-on map pack. But so zeroing in on multiple sections of the town to zoom in on that part of the battle is going to be really convenient. One of my pet peeves is when you get an adventure and it only gives you 4 or 5 of the or 2 or 3 of the key locations, and then leaves out a lot of stuff that would be really convenient to have a map for, and there's no map. So we try and map everything you could possibly need. But the result is this.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say this is the biggest map pack we've put out for one of the Thrones and Bones games so far.
Yeah. And now, in addition to that, you also have the Ben's trilogy as its own hardcover book.
Yes, thank you. So I took the 3 adventures that had come out separately because people have been asking me, "Are you going to put these out in hardcover?" And we're gathering together. We're smoothing some of the things that that now they've been played. Some have been played for a year and a half. So we're making a couple edits, and then I'm taking. I mentioned the Tales from Stolke's Hall, the short story adventure. I mean, short story collection. There was a deluxe version of the anthology that was sized like a role-playing game and had an appendices. So part of that appendices was the staff a history of Stokey's Hall and the wait staff and their most popular customer, or their most loyal customer. And I'm taking that section and translating it from 5e to Tales of the Valiant, and putting that in the appendix of the Bensa trilogy. So you've got the Stokey's Hall material in that for Tales of the Valiant.
Mm-hmm. Which certainly makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in addition to that, I do recall in going through your blog that you had been messing around with certain virtual tabletops. I think one of them was I believe one of them was Shard. How do you feel about Shard?
I'm loving Shard.
Like Roll20.
I am loving Shard. Now, Roll20, it originally announced that they were going to support Tales of the Valiant, and then they came out and said they wouldn't. And I don't know the reason for that. It was a very strange thing that they did, but they came out and announced that they were no longer working on developing Roll20 support. Tales of the Valiant support on Roll20. Shard has been supporting them from the get-go, and has a huge catalog of Cobalt Press material for both 5e and Tales of the Valiant, and has been wonderful to work with. And so we started playing, I had a Roll20 Empire of the Ghouls campaign, and we started playing on Shard to play through some of my own material.
Mm-hmm.
And my group liked it so much that even though we've only got one chapter left in Empire of the Ghouls, I duplicated everything in Shard, and when we do resume that campaign, we'll finish it in Shard instead of Roll20. My players who are very on the ball love it. I have one player who is that guy that, I would say everybody roll initiative, and he would say, how do I do that? And I'm like, you've been playing with me for 2 years. What do you mean, how do I do that?
Are you sure is he legitimately confused about it, or is he just trying to mess with you?
Yes. But he has come to me and said that he understands so much better what he's doing on Shard, that he just absolutely loves it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's made him a better player.
Yeah.
And I just find it so nice. I always found it really awkward. I hate to bagging on too many things. I will praise Shard. I won't diss Roll20. I love the way books are handled in Shard. I find it very convenient to read while gaming. I have, in other systems, I have always kept a PDF open because I found the PDF easier to read than the compendium. And with Shard, it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. And they do so many little things. One thing I haven't done yet is you can build a store in Shard, and then players can buy things from that store and sell things to that store. And it's like a video game where, like a market in Skyrim, where the inventory will change based on player interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can go in and change it too. So you can say, like, next week this store has gotten these items, it doesn't have these items. You can change the price, so when you're in a situation where you're like, well, this town is remote, so prices are 25% higher than they are normally. So you can just go in and blanket raise all the prices by 25%. I mean, it's just, there are so many quality of life things in Shard, and I'm still new to it. I'm continually finding out things I can do in Shard, and it's blowing my mind. And oh my God, inputting into it, because I used to homebrew so much into D&D Beyond, and it was such a nightmare. And homebrewing monsters in D&D Beyond is a nightmare. And Shard, you type the monster in text, you select it, and you hit convert.
Yeah. And
it's just so nice.
Yeah,
it's so nice.
I remember talking about Shard when Wizards of the Coast wanted to put out their own virtual tabletop, and I had said that was going to fail. And that was before it actually did. It didn't even get. I gave it too much credit. I figured it would come out and fail, not fail before it even got out. But I just felt that there was no market for it because when it comes to doing a 5e focused virtual tabletop, we've had Shard for the longest time.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do hear good things about maps, and I'm sorry that Sigil failed, because it does look cool, but it's not I when they first announced it, I was afraid it was going to take off, and then D&D Beyond would have even more of a monopoly than they do now. But it's not why we play role-playing games. If I want that kind of immersive experience, I'll go to play Skyrim again. I want to sit around my friends, and I do love it. I mean, I'm sorry. I think when it, I'm sorry we'll never have, because if they had done it where users could create their own thing and then could collab, one day there would be a fully three-dimensional model of Waterdeep that was accurate to every single building on that giant map, and you could walk through Waterdeep, and that would be wonderful. I don't know if you saw the Egyptian Kickstarter, the Keshanar.
I did.
Yeah, they. I mean, I don't. That Kickstarter blows my mind because it really looks like they're spending $10 million to make $1 million, but I don't know how you do that except you start with 10 million and you blow it all and don't care if you make it back. But they built their city in Unity and it's gorgeous, and that's not something every Kickstarter can do, but I'll play in that, sure, or at least I'll walk through it once or twice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and admittedly, doing so in something like Unity makes things a hell of a lot easier because there's long amounts of precedent when it comes to making stuff in Unity. There's whole stores just for developers for an asset base and all of that. It did result in the problem of asset flipping for a bit, but that you don't see as many asset flippers as you did maybe 9 years ago. But I think in addition to that, I believe one of the add-ons you have is Tomb of the Frost Giant, which is fifth level.
Yep. And that's right now. That's a PDF and Shard tabletop only. Mm-hmm. And it's a short adventure. I just there's a map that Heroic Maps had called Tomb of the Frost Giant Queen that I've been in love with for years, and I just said, hey, can I write a short adventure for that? And Joe said, sure. And so it's Tomb of the Frost Giant, not Frost Giant Queen, and because I didn't have a Queen Draugr Giant illustration, I was part of the impetus for that adventure was to use stuff I already had, but it ends up introducing some new monsters, some coal fire elementals, and it's just a short one-shot adventure. I'm very proud of it, and I'll one of the projects I'm working on right now is a collection of adventures that get outside of the Norse setting and take place all over the continent. And that'll probably be the end of this year, the beginning of next year, depending on how things go.
Yeah.
But I'll include Tomb in that as the one from the Norse land, so it will be put out in a physical product at some point. Mm-hmm. But the bulk of that book actually won't take place in Nordgard. It'll take place in many other countries.
Yeah. And in addition to that, one of the stretch goals I noticed is doing conversions of the two core Thrones and Bones books and converting them into Tales of the Valiant. When it comes to the idea of conversion, is it something that you see as going to be relatively simple, or is it going to be some more extensive work that would need to be done?
The most labor intensive part of it is going to be the bestiary in the back of that book, in the back of the campaign setting. That's going to be a lot of work, but it's something I want to do because I want to have those monsters available for me to use going forward, and that'll be labor intensive. Since most of it is setting material, it won't involve that much work. Mm-hmm. And I have put out the player's guide already, so the player's facing mechanics are already done, and there's some other things I want to update. I've created a lot of more monsters that were in the original book. So when I do, I don't know if we're gonna hit that stretch goal. When I do that, it'll have significantly more monsters than the original edition. And then finally, those first two books, although they have a ton of original art, they do have some stock art in them. And it's been driving me crazy, especially when I see the stock art somewhere else, because I don't want someone to see one thing and recognize it as stock art and assume that something original that's really beautiful is also stock art. So I have commissioned artwork for all the remaining stock in those two books to eliminate it so that there'll be 100% original art. And so I'm sitting on a ton of artwork no one's seen, and in addition to the artwork that are was already original to the book. And so that'll be, and I think one of the things I'm going to do too is because we're adding so much to it, the original campaign setting has 2 adventures in the end, and then Sagas of Norengard starts at level 3 and goes to level 3 to 8 with 7 more adventures. And I think I will move those 2 adventures out of the campaign setting and put them in Sagas. So Sagas is just a 1st to 8th level adventure book with 9 adventures. And then Sagas will take a little bit of work because it was early days for me and TTRPGs, and I was looking at Courts of the Shadow Fae from Cobalt Press, which I've never run, and I've always wanted to run. It looks so wonderful. But Courts of the Shadow Fae presents the monsters as they are encountered in the story instead of putting them all in an appendix at the end. And I have since learned what a bad idea that is. So when I do Sagas, I'll be reorganizing that whole book. I'll be stripping all the monsters out of the individual adventures and sticking them in the appendix in alphabetical order where they belong. And so it'll be, and there are style guide differences between 2014 D&D and TOV. So I'll be making, I'll be working with my copy editor on making sure we're using the correct style for TOV. I'll be redoing all the monsters. I'll be moving the monsters to the appendix. I'll be substituting the art. So it'll be a fairly significant change when we do Sagas. Mm-hmm.
And for the sake of people who are kind of outside looking in on it, if you were to give a elevator pitch on the major differences between the way monsters are set up in Tales of the Valiant compared to 5e, what would you have in that pitch?
So this is just what a consumer sees, not what a designer does. There are no hit dice for the monsters. Monsters have a flat hit point. It won't say like 5d6. It'll just say 82 hit points or something. And that's not arrived at with hit die. There's no hit die calculations for the monsters. And then they don't list ability scores. They just list the ability bonuses. So it just says strength +3, dexterity +2, wisdom -1. If the monster has is proficient in an ability, that's not listed separately. It's just added to the ability bonus. So if a monster was proficient in dexterity, and it would have otherwise had a dexterity +2, and it has a +2 proficiency, it'll say dexterity +4. And so, you may be looking at it's to hit, and it's to hit may just be, will be +4, but then its dexterity is +4, and you're like, where's its proficiency bonus? Oh, its proficiency bonus is included in the dexterity ability right there. And then monsters have their resistances and immunities are granted based on, they're not, they only can have additional ones, but they're granted based on type. So all undead have undead resilience, and that'll list the things that they are resistant or immune to. And then in the stat block, it'll just say undead resilience, and then down in the traits, it'll explain that in detail. And so that's the first thing I look for when I look at a book that claims to have TOV monsters, if they include that. If they didn't include that, I know they're just doing a straight conversion of formatting. And then they tend to give their monsters a little something. They hit harder. They hit harder than 2014 monsters. And then the Cobalt Press monsters always hit harder, but now they really hit harder. And they tend to give them a reaction or bonus action. In addition, if they're working on a monster that already exists, like their version of a monster in the SRD is gonna have an extra attack or trait or something it can do beyond the one you're used to, and that usually makes it a little less boring, a little more surprising, a little different. And so I try too when designing monsters to always think about that extra thing they can do.
Yeah, I can get that. Plus it means that you can have a repeat of the Kobold incident that I had on more than one occasion with games where the party's up against a bunch of kobolds. Somebody arrogantly thinks, "Oh, it's just kobolds. They're easy pickings," and because of the fact that the kobolds are using team tactics better than the party gets wiped.
Yep.
I've had that happen at least twice. Because somebody's like, "Oh, it's kobolds. They're Babby's first monster." Somebody who knows how to use team tactics and knows how to do hit and run with kobolds can make them a menace.
Yep. Although I have a hard time attacking kobolds. They're some of my favorite creatures, and I like kobolds as people. I always feel guilty when we slaughter kobolds.
Yeah. On the other hand, I can understand that, but if they hit first, then open season.
Of course, and yep. And in fact, our last Emperor of the Ghouls game just had we just slaughtered a bunch of them.
Yeah. I do wonder, because of the fact that the town obviously has a feasting hall. If the age-old cliche of the feasting brawl or the tavern brawl or the like is going to make an appearance in Fury the Forsaken.
No, I've done that twice, and I'm not gonna go into that well again for a while. The meat hall owner is named Chiri Offinger, and he's a surly, moody, not very pleasant person, but a great cook, and has a cat named Ramby and a boar named Ramby, because he doesn't have much imagination either, so he just named them both the same thing. And then the menu at that is you can get fermented shark that's marinated in the dirt for 6 months, actual Icelandic dish. So there's a lot of personality to be had in the meat hall, but and there are some grizzled Viking warriors who hang out there who are one of the aforementioned groups I mentioned that may be induced to fight or not, depending on how things go. So certainly there's the possibility for meat hall brawls.
And in hindsight, given what you mentioned about the premise of Fury the Forsaken, there's one bit of history I ended up getting reminded of, and admittedly this is kind of a stretch. Are you familiar with the LDF, or the Local Defense Force in the UK?
No.
This was a unofficial force during World War II. It's also had the nickname of Dad's Army. The idea was local guard made of people who were either too old or too young to join the proper army, and were told to defend the nation with what they could do, which resulted in some very, very weird results. Like, imagine a Rolls Royce that's armored up like something out of Mad Max, which was a real thing.
Yep.
Oh, just that kind of defend the town with whatever you have and whatever works is going to lead to some interesting combinations when you give people enough time and possibly alcohol. Lord knows I've seen what happens when engineers have too much free time in tabletop. We've all seen
there's 40 barrels of whale oil, which may or may not survive to the final battle. So there's a lot of don't burn the town down in the course of trying to save it.
Yeah, I'm just saying you give people, especially engineers, enough time, and they will come up with beautiful and horrifying things.
Let them. Let them.
Oh, I've certainly done so, and some of my GMs have let me come up with horrible things. That's why the up button has become such a meme. I think I told you about that a few years ago. You know, you step on the trap, you go straight up for about 6 seconds at 40 miles an hour, and it does not matter if there is a ceiling, or if you're stepping on the thing in the middle of a cave. It says you go up, so you are going up. So imagine what happens when a dragon steps on that trap in a cave lined with adamantite.
Ooh.
Yeah, donkey salsa. Donkey salsa and meat's on the menu. But I can certainly see that. There's always the stereotype of the surly blacksmith, but we don't have enough surly cooks.
Yep.
And
Richard makes great characters, and that character is entirely Richard's invention, and part of why I fell in love with him when I first played his first adventure is because he makes such wonderful NPCs.
Is that the reason one of the add-ons is having someone's likeness as a regular in Stokel's Hall?
It's not a. Oh yeah, it is an add-on. This, I apologize. Yes. I apologize. That was a late addition to it. I almost thought I hadn't done it with this one. That's something I like to do. We did that with the original one for the heroes of Ravengard, and then I had one guy who's backed for that 3 times, and I'm glad he hasn't done it for this, because he played one character. He was one character in one adventure, then he was the twin brother of that character in another adventure, and then he bought it for his late father, and so his late father is actually the bartender at Stolke's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could get that. Yep. Now, with that in mind, for Fury of the Forsaken itself, what are you shooting for as far as a page count?
Oh, that's the one I said. Fury is right now at 111 pages, and I think and I haven't formatted all the artwork for the appendix yet, so it'll probably be around 120.
Yeah, 120, maybe 130 if it really has to get stretched.
It's completely written, so I don't think it'll go much beyond 120.
Yeah.
I'm pretty. It's pretty close to. Most of it's laid out, and it's all written, so it's pretty close to done.
Yeah, I can certainly get that.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as a release window, what are you shooting for as far as the digital versions at the very least?
Well, the deadline I gave myself in Kickstarter is December, but if we don't hit the stretch goals, it'll actually deliver a lot faster. I'd like to have everything out and done by September.
And fall and winter would be an apropos time of year to run this kind of adventure.
Absolutely.
Especially for those of us who live in places where there is no such thing as the middle seasons.
Yep.
You can't see it, but I'm raising my hand because I'm guilty as charged.
I'm in Alabama. We have a long spring, but we have a very short fall.
Because I've had the joke for years that Mother Nature is on the drugs. Which drugs? Yes, including ones that haven't been invented yet. Just hang out with Hunter S. Thompson or something.
I have a wonderful back porch I never use because it's only pleasant in the fall for like a week, and then in the spring it's pollen like you wouldn't believe. Yeah. So it's utterly useless back porch.
But with that said, I will keep an eye out for it and the future of Thrones and Bones, of course. And I do want to sincerely thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to brave the time zone hell to come all the way back to my monastery and enjoy the madness here.
No, my pleasure at all. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties at the start, but I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, we got it figured out eventually, so I count that as a win. And
Yep.
of course, a sincere thanks goes out to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there'll be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here, on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra, I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody!
soi cho là cứ ngã cho